Welcome to the Last Chance Dolphins in Depth, a podcast provided to you by the Miami Herald. We are seeing the Miami Dolphins have the slimmest margin of possibilities of hope to make the playoffs. They are playing the Cleveland Browns this Sunday at 4:05 or 4:15? 4:05 p.m. Joining me now to talk about Miami's next to final game, this possible playoff elimination game, is Barry Jackson and C. Isaiah Smalls, both employed by the Miami Herald, as am I. Barry, give me the possibilities that Miami is still in the game.
Okay, well, one of three things has to happen. Either both the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers have to lose out, or the Chargers have to lose out and Indianapolis has to lose one, or the Broncos have to lose out and Indianapolis has to lose one as well. The most likely course, as many Dolphins fans know, would be Denver losing at Cincinnati on Saturday, losing to Kansas City, which is sewn up the number one seed, but might play Mahomes a little bit because otherwise he would go 23 or 24 days without a game. So if you get those two things, two Dolphins wins and a Colts loss, then the Dolphins are in. But the Colts loss is tricky because they go to the Giants, who are trying to avoid a winless home season on Sunday. They're starting Drew Lock, who stinks. Then the following Sunday, they play Mac Jones in Jacksonville. So a Colts loss, obviously, is the challenge with all of this. And if the Colts don't lose, then six things need to happen. And the Dolphins need to win out. The Chargers need to lose at New England this weekend and then lose at Las Vegas. And the Broncos have to lose those two aforementioned games at Cincinnati late Saturday afternoon and then home to an unmotivated Kansas City team. So it's on life support. I guess my question for you and Isaiah would be, if you don't make the playoffs, is 9-8 remotely satisfying? Can you feel good about that? Or is the year still a total disappointment?
Go for it, Isaiah.
I'm going to quote the great Jay-Z. What is it? Minor league, moral victories are for minor league coaches, right? This is the big leagues, right? 9-8 is, I don't think there's anything good about a moral victory, right? Like this team, as you know, Stephen Ross said at the beginning of the season, had some sort of Super Bowl aspirations. Now, us as the media, we might have been like, all right, guys, let's just get to the playoffs. But I think them missing the playoffs, I think, is a huge disappointment, considering, the talent that is on this roster, considering, what happened early in the season, right? And considering also like the slim chances, the slim margins in which they've lost once Tua returned, right? I think it's unfortunate. Obviously, we're not blaming anything on Tua, but even Tua himself said that like he feels some responsibility for the season, considering he put himself in harm's way against the Bills, misses 4 games, and they go 1-3 over that span. Even if they go, 2-2 over that span, like we're having a totally different conversation, right? So it's unfortunate, but personally, I think it's a wash season.
While I hear what everybody is saying, I look at 9-8 as a moral victory for this reason. It would be the franchise's 5th straight winning record. It will be the best stretch this franchise has been in since I think they had 7 years between 1997, like 2003 or 2004, where they had 5 positive seasons. It would show that the franchise is still headed in the right direction, even though they had some very unfortunate circumstances. Now, do I feel like this is the organization that Steve Ross paid for and signed up for? No, I don't. Do I feel like leadership can take them to this final destination? No, I don't. I've been very clear about that. We're going to get another credit card, max it out, and pretend like we're going to do it all over again, and that's fine. I'm absolutely okay with it. But I think it makes it more palatable if we're 9-8, as opposed to, let's say, we're 8-9. Because 8-9, you're a loser. At least the one thing that you can't say with this organization is that they're a loser. And I think Tua prides himself on the fact that he's never had a losing record. Despite all the adverse situations that he's been through, despite all the horrible coaches that he's had, despite Mr. Mean Guy Brian Flores, being his coach, he's never produced a losing record. And I think there's a point of pride to that. Now, am I naive enough to think that they're going to make the playoffs? I'm not. I'm not like Barry. I don't sell hope. I'm not a hope. So
I'm a hope peddler. I tell you, a hope trafficker. I tell you. But this I do want to add. If they do finish 9-8, at least it's not a debacle. It's not like the Jets and the Giants and the Bears and what their fans have to endure. It's obviously disappointment. A playoff win was expected by year 3 of the Tyreek Hill era. I will point to 3 things that doom this season. Number 1, the Mostert and Ingold fumbles in Indianapolis, a very winnable game. Number 2, defense let them down against Arizona, 28-27 game. They should have won that game. The Cardinals are a very mediocre team. And then the debacle against the Titans on Monday night. We know it was Tyler Huntley's first game. We know he didn't know the system, but the defense didn't show up. So obviously the big global issue of the season is they didn't address backup quarterback well enough. Obviously they didn't have Chubb all season. They lost Phillips. But if you point to 3 specific games, that is how they lost the season. You just do what you're supposed to do, beat the Tennessee Titans at home, and then you are in control of your destiny these next 2 weeks.
Hey, if they beat Tennessee the year before, they win the AFC East. I mean, Tennessee
Titans have definitely had their number as of late, and that's a shame.
But you know why they've had their number? Because they're better in the trenches than the Miami Dolphins. And while I understand where Barry is coming from, when you do a piss poor job of fortifying and reinforcing your trenches, then you are going to struggle in those areas. And you know what? I get it. You're probably going to have a winning record in this December, depending on whether or not the Jets want to play or not. And I don't think the Jets are going to be an easy game. Hell, I don't think Cleveland's going to be an easy game. But you're right. They got to learn to take care of their business, and they have not done that. And it's not Tua's injury that has derailed this season. It's a matter of you not being able to take care of your business. And I hate to sit here and blame this on Anthony Weaver's defense, even though they are a top 10 unit in total yards and points production, points allowed, without sacks, without turnovers, which is to me a miraculous feat. I got to look at games against Indianapolis. They couldn't stop him in that final drive. Games against Arizona, could not stop him in that final drive. Games against Buffalo, could not stop him in that final drive. I think there was another one. Was it? Well, Houston, no, not really. They did a really good job against Houston. Was it Green Bay where they just couldn't stop any? Yeah, there was like 20-something.
Yeah, at the end where they closed, right, 27-19 late. They couldn't get a stop. We see how good Green Bay is, obviously. And I think we've seen as the season's gone on, the clear pecking order of teams. To see Houston manhandled against Baltimore on Wednesday after being beaten not quite as severely by Kansas City 4 days earlier, that shows you there's a clear-cut tier of, obviously at the top, Baltimore, Kansas City, at the top, and Buffalo at the top of the hierarchy, then another level with Houston and Pittsburgh, and then the Dolphins are in that third level, right, with the Chargers and perhaps the Cincinnati. You put in the second level. So that's what they are. As I tweeted, they're the 10th to 20th best team in the league, and Steve Ross appears to be, I don't want to say content with that, but the fact that they're 10 to 20 and not 1 to 8 doesn't appear enough to motivate him to blow it up, right?
That's fair. That's fair. I don't think we're going to see changes. I don't even think if they lose their final 2 games, I don't think we're going to see changes. But, hey, I'm all right with running it back one more season as long as it's just one more season that we're sacrificing. This isn't a Mike McDaniel thing. This isn't a Chris Greer thing. This is just how long are you going to ride the mediocrity merry-go-round before you actually do something about it? But hey, that's Steve Ross. He's the one that's writing these checks. He's the one that's going to pay the bill at the end of dinner. If he's paying the bill, it doesn't matter where I'm eating. So I'm fine I'm fine with wherever we eat as long as he's paying the bill. I know Dolphin fans aren't happy with that, but this is just the cards that you've been dealt. Now let's talk about this game against Cleveland. We got a little bit of an update where one of the probably important players in Anthony Walker Jr. is not going to play. He's regressed with a knee injury. It seems as if his season is done. If not, he's out for this game. According to Mike McDaniel, Tyrell Dobson is going to be stepping in and replacing him. I'm not sure how you gentlemen felt about his last performance as a starter, but I wasn't exactly that pleased or overwhelmed. So how do you feel like the loss of Walker is going to impact this defense?
Isaiah?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think it's huge, right? That's the guy, that's your quarterback of your defense, right? And so anytime you have somebody step into that role, there's going to be at least a bit of a lapse in communication, right? And so that's the only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about, right? Like the Browns offense doesn't necessarily scare me, right? DTR at quarterback, Jerome Ford, who's okay, Jerry Jeudy, who's, having a good year, and Njoku, right, who's, pretty one of those top tier tight ends, right? Or maybe not top tier, right under that top tier. But I think it's a huge loss, to be honest. Like I said, like that is the guy making your calls. That's the guy getting everybody together, make sure everyone's set. And so I'm just a little bit concerned because the Dolphins already had issues defending elite tight ends and limiting them, right? And Njoku might not be a Brock Bowers or a Trey McBride or a George Kittle, but he's right under that tier, right? And so that's where I'm giving a little bit pause for concern, right? I'm definitely a little bit concerned, considering no AWOC this week.
Yeah, I think Isaiah makes a great point. Omar, you asked a great question to, I believe it was Joe Barry. It might have been Anthony Weaver, about why the blue dot goes to Anthony Walker, not Jordan Brooks, who's been tremendous this year. Jordan Brooks couldn't be anything more than what the Dolphins have gotten. They couldn't have asked for anything more. And the point was made, I think, by Joe Barry, that there's some leaders who are quiet, like Jordan Brooks, and others who are more talkative, like Anthony Walker. And as Isaiah just nailed, Anthony Walker is a tremendous communicator and leader. So will they get the same from Dotson? If it's Duke Riley, I would imagine they get the communication from Duke Riley. Will Dotson give them the level of communication to avoid mix-ups that Anthony Walker gave them? So that's a big question to me. And even though, obviously, Dorian Thompson-Robinson isn't going to scare anyone, he was ineffective last week through 2 picks. He does have mobility, which sometimes bothers the Dolphins. And Ford, the backup running back, Nick Chubb, who's on IR, has averaged 5.5 per carry. The Dolphins have been good against the run for the most part, except in Green Bay, a few other games. But they are top 10 in the league against the run this year. But it's going to be cold. It might be wet, right? And so do you leave yourselves in a position where Ford can beat you on the ground game? To me, guys, and Omar, I'm curious what your sense is for Tua for Sunday. To me, there are 2 things that work with Tua. One is he's been incredible as usual against non-playoff teams, against bad teams. 13 TDs, no picks against non-playoff teams this year. But at the same time, we know the last time he played in a significant rainstorm in Tennessee, which was a different era. I was with big bad Brian Flores, right? We know what the.
Are you bringing up the football game in Tennessee? Is that what you're doing? You're bringing
Well, I'd like to see evidence of Tua in wet, cold weather, right? He played well in cold weather in Buffalo on the Saturday night game, obviously, right? And he was pretty good against Green Bay. So I'm not throwing shade, as you know, we're all Tua supporters here, but I there's a risk of turnovers Sunday. He's got to play a clean game.
Yeah, he's definitely got to play a clean game. I will give you the cold weather that impacts him and his performance. And I can't deny the fact that the wet ball, the last time we saw him with a wet ball, it was not a good game. I don't think it was all on him, but it just was not a good performance. We shall see. The one thing that I think will benefit to it is there's a possibility, I don't know how likely it is, that that the Dolphins will have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in their lineup. Obviously, last week they had to go without Jalen Waddle. They leaned a little bit more on the run game. It didn't help that Isaiah Wynn was in. It didn't hurt that Isaiah Wynn was in there. Probably helped them jumpstart the run game finally after the 6 week of hemorrhaging to get 3.0 yards per carry. They got 166 rushing yards. I'm curious to see what that performance will look like in another week against another opponent, against a defensive line that features Myles Garrett. But having Jalen Waddle back, how likely do you think it is that he plays, Barry, and what kind of impact do you think he will have?
Well, the answer he gave about whether he's playing Sunday, quote, there's always a chance, doesn't exactly elicit confidence, right? Well, I mean, someone says, are you going to win the lottery? There's always a chance, right? So I'd be a little concerned about that. But Malik Washington's growth has been enough, and the Browns are so bad that I'm not terribly concerned about Waddle's absence. Obviously, he would help, but you have Jonnu, you have Achane, who's turned into the best pass catching back in the league. So I'm not concerned about if they have enough at receiver this weekend. I'm more concerned about them playing a clean game and the offensive line playing well to be able to run the ball. Because obviously, as you said, last week, first time in 6 weeks that they were able to run the ball effectively. Can they duplicate that again? Isaiah, what's your biggest concern, Sunday? Because as you guys know, for me, it's a clean game and the potential rain.
Definitely a clean game, potential rain as well. But for me, I'm looking to Tua and Tyreek to establish that connection again. They definitely were not on the same page last week. I think Pro Football Focus noted that there was one drop from Tyreek. I saw about two, not including the tipped ball in the end zone, right? The other one I think was kind of an outbreaking route toward the sideline. He just didn't get his head around fast enough, and it just kind of hit him, boom, right there, it seemed. So I'm looking for them to kind of reestablish that connection, because just to me, when you talk about like motivation, right? Like, what do you have to play for right now? For me, I think that like reestablishing that connection, because the entire year it's been like, well, too high safeties. We can't really get it. Can't really, and I get it, like, but I also feel like these guys have been facing too high safeties the minute that they realized that they were elite players, right? And so there has to be some way for you guys to get this man open. This was the #1 player in the league last year, according to his peers, right? There has to be a way for you guys to get him open, for him to catch the ball, because he even admitted like the drops were his fault, right? Which is great to hear from a leader, right? But at the same time, they can't happen, right? Like point blank period, they can't happen, right? And so I'm looking for those two to be back on the same page. McDaniel spoke very highly of Tyreek's practice this week.
How much did he practice?
And that's the thing. We haven't seen the injury report today. I think yesterday was limited. And Tua spoke to that a little bit, saying that, we definitely took some reps together, but you always got to be cautious when it comes to injuries, because he revealed earlier this week that he has a torn ligament in his wrist. And so for me,
there's also an ankle injury, or was an ankle injury.
Yes, apparently Wes Welker let that slip yesterday. So I think, all in all, I just want them to reestablish that connection, because I think if they play well these last two games, right, they figure it out, right? This can be a carryover into next season, right? Because now they've found some level of success against these two high safety looks. And again, like, I'm not excusing Tyreek Hill too. Again, he said it himself that he dropped the ball, right? He's dropped the ball, and the drops are because he needs more reps, right? So what are you gonna do this week? You've gotten those extra reps, right? You put that out there. Look, according to Tua, what obviously we don't see much at practice, right? But according to Tua, said that they got some good reps in, right? And according to McDaniel today, he said he looked great in terms of the way he's attacking the ball, right? Now, both of these guys could have been lying, right? We will see. We will see come Sunday.
Tyreek is 166 yards from having 1,000 yards in. I believe it would be his 7th season with 1,000 yards in his 9 years. How much of a disappointment would it be if Tyreek does not get to 1,000?
Oh, I think it'd be huge, right? I mean, how do you go from the level of production he was at to ranking in the 30s in yards for receivers? That, to me, is the most puzzling thing of the season. Most everything else, I think the three of us could have seen coming. We knew that they would have difficulty running but between the numbers offensively, obviously, because their guards simply weren't good enough. But I think this is the one thing nobody could have seen coming. And to not even attempt a vertical throw in weeks. Now, Wes Welker, for people who haven't read our stories on MiamiHerald.com, Wes Welker was pretty good on this topic yesterday. He insisted that Tyreek is just as fast as he was 2 years ago. Who knows if that's true? He says that Tyreek is madder with himself than anyone possibly could be about the balls he's dropped. So he says he gives Tyreek just positive reinforcement. He doesn't get on his butt because he knows Tyreek is hard on himself. And with the thing that Isaiah just mentioned with regard to Tyreek's out of nowhere comment last Sunday that he needs to practice more, which was just weird. Why that wasn't discussed internally, why it came out in a press conference in week 15. But Wes Welker did say this is for something for us to discuss during the offseason moving forward if we want to change that approach. Now, is that a big difference to you guys? Would Tyreek be catching this balls if he had more reps with Tua during the week after 3 years together? Omar?
I mean, he had great amount of reps with him and still dropped balls against the Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs and other big games. He dropped some big passes, but we've let it slide because he was producing 1,700 yards of receiving yards. The difference now is Tyreek is still not showing up, but he's also not putting up monster numbers. I believe he's had one big catch this year, or one big play this year, and that's just out of the question for what we expect for Tyreek. It's I still look at Tyreek as a big play producer, but I was driving home. And I heard them talking on the radio, and they were talking about Isaiah's story, which was written in the Miami Herald, and it was an exclusive. And Tyreek basically confessing that, hey, yeah, I have a torn ligament in my wrist, and I've had it and played through it for most of this season. And most of us know Tyreek avoids being on the injury report because he avoids going into the training room. He gets things worked on outside the facility. As long as you do not get it done inside the facility by the team, you do not have to go on an injury report. Tyreek has skirted it for 3 years. So here's my question to you. Does a wrist injury excuse this season, and does it excuse the Houston drop? The Houston ball that he had snatched from him like his soul by on that final play against the Houston Texans.
Phrasing. I personally, I don't think I more so put that on Derek Stingley's ability more so than Tyreek's inability.
He had it in his hands.
He did have it in his hands, and I don't like to make excuses for plays because I think at the end of the day, like, you're out there, you're playing, right? Of course, you can definitely make an argument that if he has full range of that wrist, that he's coming down with that ball, right? I can't remember a time seeing a ball get snatched from Kyrie. I maybe that it's happened before. I just can't remember it, right? And so, sure, you can put it there, but I think at the same time, look, if you're healthy enough to play, and as Tyreek has said, like, there's no excuses, right? Like, you're not gonna like be like, oh man, if my wrist was a little more healed, I would have caught that. No, that's not the way these guys are wired at all, right? For them, it's just like, I made a mistake, boom, next play, that short-term memory, right? So I don't necessarily think it excuses anything. I personally believe that, like, look, yes, it's a down year, but I don't think when you look at his numbers, you're going to see that little asterisk and it's like, oh, well, there's a wrist injury, right? No one's going to say that. They're just going to look at the numbers like, dang, Tyreek had a down year. No one's going to say that. No,
I mean, but somebody's got to have a justification, a reason for it. And, you're 30 years old, even though they gave you a new contract. What do we say about 30-year-old NFL players? They're on the decline. They take longer to heal up. And we're seeing more evidence of why you do not give 30-year-olds money. Now, I would have been the last person to tell you that we were going to see a Tyreek Hill decline this season, but these are facts. This is a Tyreek Hill declined year. 70 receptions for 834 yards. This is a Devontae Parker-esque season. He is Tyreek Hill. His name is Tyreek Hill. They call him the Cheetah. If you get a nickname, but if people refer to you by nickname in the world, like, you don't get to catch 70 passes for 834 yards. Tell me another person with a nickname that's having a mediocre season. Like,
yeah, I was ready to give him a pass, guys, a semi-pass until the last 2 weeks. But these last 2 weeks are not reflective of a player who's supposed to be one of the best in the league. I want to bring up something else. Because to me, here's one thing that I absolutely have to see on Sunday. How about this team create a turnover that's not created by one of their front four or front seven players like Sealer or Calais Campbell. How about an interception? Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 180 career passes, 1 touchdown, 9 interceptions. How about we see one of the starting safeties get a pick? Holland or Poyer. They haven't had one all year. How about we see some turnover creation? Dolphins have only 13 takeaways this year. Only 5 teams have fewer. Dolphins have only 5 fumble recoveries. Only 3 teams have fewer. Dolphins have only 8 interceptions. Only 8 teams have fewer. They're 11th worst in turnover differential at -4. If there's ever a week where you should win the turnover battle, it's against a journeyman quarterback who has 1 career touchdown, 9 career picks. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. Unfortunately, I got to argue with you on this one because they don't have Kendall Fuller. Storm Duck is going to be out there playing, probably Kader Kohu playing on the boundary more than usual. More and more is going to be put on his plate. No Kendall Fuller. And let's be real about it. We haven't had much from the safety position all season. So why would we expect it now? Jordan Poyer is barely practicing. He's got a leg injury. That's not an ideal situation. Maybe you consider rotating in Elijah Campbell. Who knows at this point? Because I've checked out on the safeties. I'm not expecting good safety play because I haven't had it all season, except for maybe the season opening game. Safeties have just been absent from the season. Now they're not allowing big plays, which is to their credit, but they're not making any plays either. I don't know if I expect much, but what I do expect is good play from the defensive line, good play from the front seven, even though they're playing without Anthony Walker. And I would like this to be the Dolphins' farewell for Calais Campbell. I'll tell you some interesting news and nuggets that we'll break here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast. Calais has incentives in his contract add up to $725,000. Now, he has to play to get all of these incentives, and they're triggers for it. To get all of these incentives, he has to play 58% of the snaps for the season. And the Dolphins have to be ranked in the top 20 in points from a defensive standpoint. Now, as long as this Dolphins team's winning, they're 10th now. So I don't believe that they're going to drop out of the top 20. And he plays 55%. He's going to get $300,000. He's going to get $350,000. So as long as he continues to play, he's right now at 58%. So as long as he continues to play on his regular snap rotation, he's good there. And Calais is also very well aware of his incentives. But then we've got sacks. If he gets to 5 sacks and he's 1 short, he's at $300K. If he gets to 6 sacks, he gets another extra $100,000K. If he gets to 7 sacks, he gets another $325,000K. So right now, Calais is playing for the money. He needs an extra sack for an extra $300,000, and he's trying to do it. Now, keep in mind, this also might be his last game with the Miami Dolphins. And here's why. Because if they are not in contention, the Dolphins have a gentleman's agreement, Barry, that
Correct.
If we are not in contention, we are going to release you at the end of the season and allow you to become a free agent, but you will also be subjected to the waiver wire. I think Calais' agency has the clout in order to ensure that he is not claimed that allows him to cherry pick his opponent. Right. However, I will throw a little caveat into that. Most people expect him to go to the Baltimore Ravens. But if you're going to be playing the Baltimore Ravens, you probably would more than likely put in a claim on Calais Campbell. And I honestly see no reason why Dan Campbell would not put in a claim on Calais Campbell. Because as you see with the Detroit Lions, they are taking an all-in approach. Yeah. They go out and they get Teddy Bridgewater, put him on the 53-man roster. Just in case something happens to Jared Goff, we're good to go. And their defense has been absolutely obliterated by injuries. Calais could help them. I think Calais would probably be wise if he signed with the Chiefs just because they look like the safest bet because he is chasing a ring. Now, I make the argument to you, Barry and Isaiah, even though the Dolphins could have traded Calais at the trade deadline and gotten a draft pick for him, would you look at this organization negatively if they released him released him right before the end of the season?
No, and you
Go
have
ahead, Barry.
there. No, and I want to add a couple of things. First of all, Calais explained to me and another reporter the timing of things. He would have to be released early next week, he told us, in order to join a contender. It can't be done after the season. So this would be like a Tuesday move, probably, if the Dolphins are mathematically eliminated this weekend. Also, there was a report in The Athletic that besides the offer of a 5th rounder from Baltimore, the Dolphins were offered a 4th rounder from a team that Calais has not wanted to name. I respect the Dolphins for not making the trade. I think Mike McDaniel did the smart move by not making the trade because Calais being here made the season relevant through Christmas week. And to me, that was far more important than any mid-round pick, of which maybe 30% pan out anyway, right, of 5th-round picks. So I have no issue
here.
And also, I think it'd be the classy thing to do to release him. And I know people are saying, well, it's such a bad precedent. It's happened before with Terrell Suggs. Obviously, it happens all the time in the NBA. Big bleeping deal if they release him. Be nice to the Dolphins. It'd be nice for Calais to be rewarded. There's no classier guy in the NFL, so I don't see any issue with it. Isaiah?
And just to add to that, and I think something that Omar and I were talking about, it just sets a good precedent. Like, you're going to have to re-sign a lot of people next year, right? If in the back of their mind, they know that, like, this organization does right by its players. You need an example of that? Point to the release of Calais Campbell.
Exactly.
That does something for players, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, you're getting paid handsomely, but you want to go where you're going to be respected, where you're treated well, where the facilities, like all those things that like the Dolphins have. But again, you want to be respected, right? And it's just a sign of good faith, especially if it's a gentleman's agreement, right? You break that, and then I just don't think it bodes well in the future because it's like, look, these guys they don't care. They don't care, and you don't want to be known as an organization that doesn't care at all.
Yeah, we know the injury report is out, Barry. What does the injury report state?
As expected, Kendall Fuller, Anthony Walker, both out this week. Questionables for 6 guys. Teron Armstead, McDaniel said he's optimistic about him. D. Eskridge, we're not sure. Tyreek Hill, all indications are that he's going to continue to try to play through the wrist injury. Jordan Poyer, McDaniel was sounded cautiously optimistic but not certain. Tua listed as questionable with a hip. Tua indicated he's playing through it. Jalen Waddle, questionable with the knee. We said on the show earlier today that he said that he wouldn't necessarily rule out him playing, but he didn't sound terribly optimistic. So there you go. 6 questionables, 2 outs with Fuller and Anthony Walker. And Jordan Brooks, no designation. He's good to go for Sunday.
So let's go to some quick predictions.
One quick note before you wrap up. David Njoku is not playing as well. So that's
excellent point.
That is good for the linebacker room for sure.
All right. Let's get off some quick predictions. I am going to predict the Dolphins. It's going to be the one game where they actually put it all together. They're going to show you that we can win in the cold. I'm predicting a 30-14 Dolphins victory.
Isaiah?
I'm going to go 31 to 10. 31-10 Dolphins.
I'm going 24-7. I think the Dolphins will have a firm handle of Cleveland's offense. I think we'll just get done just enough offensively to emerge at 500 entering Week 18.
Definitely. All right, folks, we will be back on Monday to give you the wrap-up of what happened in Cleveland for Dolphins In Depth in the Miami Herald. We are out.